just looking for 100% honest, genuine answers. I don't think I've ever had a woman like me for just being me. It feels like I have to put on somewhat of an act and be somebody that I'm not just for women to show some kind of interest. Story 1. I'm completely myself, but I'm also putting my best foot forward. Does that make sense? Some people seem to think that any effort to please someone or present well is dishonest. Like, you're only being yourself if you act like you do at the grocery store on a slow Tuesday. This is wrong. Adjusting your behavior to different situations isn't dishonesty. It's just basic social skills. There's a difference between acting confident when you feel nervous versus lying about yourself. There's a difference between keeping the conversation on common ground versus hiding your interests from them. To put it another way, is it inauthentic to wear your best outfit to a first date? Of course not. It's your wardrobe, and you're fully within your rights to present it how and when you like. Story 2. 100% authentic. Won't be oversharing, though. If she can't handle my surface level best, then she's not getting an excavation permit and a designated dig site. Story 3. I used to not be good with women. Then I did a bunch of inauthentic things to get good with women. Then I learned that I could be even more authentic with women than I was originally and do just as well. Had to go through that middle step to get to the last step, though. Story 4. I am completely myself 100%, but that comes with acknowledging that not every person will be into who you are. Some people don't like the orange starburst, and that's fine, but if they instead opened up a pink wrapper and found an orange, they'd be pretty upset. I'm with my wife because she understands who I am and is okay with all of that. But in my time, I've had plenty of people tell me to change instead. I couldn't be with someone who didn't like my normal personality. That sounds like hell. Story 5. When my wife and I first met, we were both coming out of absolutely horrible relationships. On our first date, my wife said to me, "No games. Be yourself. It either works or it doesn't. Worst case, we may just be friends." 12 years later, it has been the most wonderful experience ever. I have never had to hide anything or act like anyone but who I really am. I can't put into words what a freeing thing it has been to just be myself. Story 6. Everyone hides a few things at the start, I'd reckon. On the first few dates, you are highlighting your good qualities while keeping the bad qualities at bay. Don't lie by omission on big things, but it's normal to pretend you have good table manners when you actually do not. This never lasts, though. If you stay with someone, they will see the bad also, and if they stick it out through the bad, then it's hopefully smooth sailing. Aside from that, be as true to who you are as possible. You don't want to change your personality drastically to be with someone, then have them hate who you are when you finally revert back to your authentic self. You will always revert back unless you are very young or have a personality disorder. My wife and I are both huge personal computer gaming nerds, though we don't look it. I'd never expected my major interest to come up on a first date, but when it did, I was honest about what I loved, and it turned out she loved much of the same. If either of us had hidden that fact out of fear, who knows if we'd have continued on. Story 7. I don't put on acts, but I have to force myself to avoid behaviors that I know will turn women off, and I also have to force myself to do certain things that I know are necessary to keep attraction, so it is definitely inauthentic. The reality is that, in the end, life itself is inauthentic. We should be prepared to learn and change, no matter how hard and awkward it might be. Story 8. Past a certain age, many men's most authentic self will offer them little to no geographical access to women to begin with. Going to the bar was an act, talking to a stranger was an act, pretending to care long enough to get to know them was an act. But these are all entirely reasonable things to do. Just be yourself is great advice for some men, but it's terrible advice for others. If you're on the introverted or reserved end of the spectrum, you're going to have to push yourself to do things you'd rather not do just to be in the conversation. Story 9. I've had a relationship for nearly 5 years. It's a bit of an act, like 10%. No, I don't care about family dinners. Yes, sure. I'm excited to see your family. It's give and take. Story 10. It's all an act from the first moment, dropping little by little as you spend time together, until it isn't. If you have both fully relaxed and lost the mask and still love each other, you stand a decent chance at a long and happy relationship. Story 11. There are multiple sides to all of us. So when I meet a new woman, they definitely see the better version of me, but it's still me. So to answer the question, no, I don't think I'm putting up an act. Story 12. When you say successful with women, do you mean like a player or someone who just has a healthy relationship? I think that's where you'll find the difference in the ability to be one's authentic self. I'm not a player by any stretch of the imagination, but I've had a few long-term relationships, 4 or more years each. And I would say I was my authentic self in all of them and was generally my authentic self from the beginning. I found that the couple of times I did try to fake it, it ended in some toxic situations. But when it's right, you can be yourself. The problem is that not all authentic selves are the same. Some are just more generally appealing and get more attention, not to mention differences in outward appearances. You might just have to do more trial and error before you find someone you can be your authentic self with. All I can say is that it rarely begins with faking it. Story 13. My authentic self is who I am playing board games with the boys. So drunk I throw their beers into the street when I lose. No woman finds that attractive. I do think that is a poor life decision on their part, but they are free to make their own decisions. Story 14. So it's actually the only way. The issue is that someone who isn't naturally attracted to you is going to see through whatever charade you put on to try to be attractive. Why? Because they have already met people who naturally present the way you're imitating, and you're not doing as well as they are. So it's a losing game. Instead, just be unabashedly yourself and attract the people who are attracted to that version of yourself. Once you find 1 or 2 people who are attracted to your personality, you'll be more confident, which will then help with making advances down the line. Now, that said, please do the following to help your odds. Personal hygiene. Find clothes that fit. Work out. Story 15. I don't know what authentic self means in this context. For some guys, it means, I don't want to put effort into anything other than myself. So taking the girl out to dinner, playing less than 4 hours of games a night, and doing foreplay all fall under inauthentic. For some guys, it means pretending to love the opera, loud bars, drugs, or sobriety. I've never been inauthentic in the latter sense, but I have put effort into my relationship. No woman has ever had an issue with any of that. Story 16. Everyone always puts on a different self depending on who you are with. Think about how you act at work versus with friends versus with your parents. It is natural and everyone does it. I doubt many people are ever completely their authentic self, even when alone. What you need to do is find your dating self, the person you want to be and can naturally maintain while dating, in a relationship, or married without forcing it. It will probably be similar to the act you currently put on with friends. Story 17. Chris Rock has a great bit on this. Sure, men exaggerate and embellish at first and often as long as possible, but so do women. Makeup, high heels, hair extensions, being extra nice, flirty, and laughing at your jokes, etc. Story 18. I've had 10 years of being an Asian gamer and anime nerd, and it was difficult. Half boy, half man. I had a girlfriend who loved me, but I always felt inadequate. I didn't know who I was, what I stood for, what I was capable of, and who I could become. I found it hard to get a job and felt worthless. In my mid-20s, I broke up with my girlfriend, went abroad solo, and lived an adventure for 3 to 4 years. I met new people from all corners of the world. I also gave myself space for a fresh start. I worked out, went back to studies, found a career, and practiced self-care. Yes, man. I came back. I started playing tennis and swimming. I met a group of friends, a close-knit group. I worked out. With a new brand, attitude to life, social skills, and upgraded appearance, I discovered my potential and became quite popular with the ladies. I found success in the dating apps. I met other guys who studied hard and had great jobs but were ultimately boring with no life experience. I ended up sharing my advice with them, and they also found success. Nowadays, I'm happily married. I feel like I've met someone who would have liked me either way, as a nerd or as an athletic person. I wouldn't have met her or had the belief that she could like me if I had stayed as a nerd. Years later, I learned about people like Jordan Peterson or Andrew Tate, and oddly I felt that their tenets of self-care and self-improvement were things I learned independently. I disagree with some of their more extreme conservative views, And I believe that travel, solitude, and reflection are also hugely important in developing oneself. Story 19. When I hid the damage, the scars and dents, I did well. Really well. If you can be hurt, women don't want you. They claim, I want a man that can be vulnerable. But what they want is a man who can take a performative hit and shrug it off. Story 20. I cannot be completely authentic. I would probably give my wife a panic attack if I told her that part of me would like to be with every skinny girl half my age I walk past on the street, even though I have no intention of trying. Story 21. I am 100% myself. But that means they will not always like me. I remember in my early 20s scaring off a religious girl that way. I am also like that with male friends. Some guys just straight up will not like you. As long as you are happy with yourself, that is what matters most. Story 22. To a certain extent, I can say I do not present my more goofy humor as if I were hanging around a family member, for example. I just present my best self and show that I like to have fun, but to a certain extent, I guess you could say I am not being 100% myself like I would be with someone I knew for years. If it is my girlfriend, then yes, she knows the full me. I could not be with someone long-term and have to hide who I am. If I am just trying to have sex with them, then unfortunately I can be inauthentic, sad but true. Naturally, I am a nice, goofy guy, and I know that does not get sex from most women, so I have learned to suppress that, sadly. Story 23. I would not say it is not authentic, but it was a bit of a show. I used to have a script effectively in my early 20s. It did numbers for real, but eventually I stopped because it felt cringy and not me. Probably the most disheartening thing I have experienced firsthand is the amount of interest I have received from women drying up as I firmly got my life together as a person and became the best version of myself. I had more success as a playboy than a genuine person. Story 24. It's not so much an act, but knowing when to downplay certain aspects. Like, it's fine if you're a huge Star Wars geek, but maybe don't lay that part on thick in the beginning unless you met in an environment conducive to geek life. Story 25. I only ever tried to be with a woman when I felt some compatibility already, and that is why I usually did okay. I never wanted to put on an act. I'm of average height and a bit buck-toothed, and never had a proper job, but I balanced all that out by being an incredibly good listener. I basically bring the same energy as a supportive gay best friend in a romantic comedy. That's just who I am. Women can't get enough of that. Tell me all about it. Every detail. That must have been hard for you. That's like that other issue you told me about last week. Is there a connection? It might sound a bit contrived, like that vicar fellow in Pride and Prejudice thinking up things to flatter the ladies with, but I genuinely am just interested in the people I want to be with. I do want to know all about them. Well, I did. I am happily married now. Because of my wife's upbringing, she really, really wanted a man who could listen to her with utter attentive focus. That's me. My daughter describes me as the listening parent. Yes, that is not an accident. I was selected. Since I like to think things through a bit deeper, maybe this isn't so much women being interested in me, as it is them being happy with how I treat them. Story 26. I do not lie about who I am to a woman, but if I am interested in her, I gauge what about me would be most compelling to her. For example, some women I have dated were interested in my nerdier side, like my wife, and some were more interested in why I do the work I do. Since I have only been in long-term relationships, they all eventually learn the different aspects of me, but there is thought to what they learn about in the first few dates. Does that count? Story 27. Ever heard someone say, when you speak another language, you also take on another personality as well? It's the same thing with personal relations. We speak one language when we are with family, another at work, another with longtime friends, with pets, with older people, and with women. You're still the same person, but adapting to the different conditions and situations, just like when speaking in another language, you're adapting to different cultures and behaviors. You can't speak in a language that the other person doesn't understand while also not adapting your behavior and manners to that other culture, and then expect to connect fully with them. This is where everything connects. Women speak a different language than men. They socialize and speak differently from us, verbally and emotionally. We want to connect with them but barely make an effort to learn their language. So leave that frustration behind. Become fluent in the language of women. connect with the locals, enjoy the view, establish roots, and make some babies. Story 28. It's an act. It's a first impression. The skill to attract a woman on an initial date is entirely different from the skill set necessary to keep her around. The moment the real self comes out, they almost never last. Story 29. I'm a giga nerd. I don't hide it. I make it obvious. You name it, I take part. Gaming, Dungeons and Dragons, model painting, tabletop war games, the lot. I also am aware that girls don't find any of those intrinsically attractive. So I lift, look after myself, keep up on everything on the hygiene front, and try to learn about genuinely interesting things regularly and read up on self-improvement. From the outset, I make it clear I'm unapologetically a dork and am quite happy making fun of myself, and while dating that worked great. They're dating me, they're not expected to like all my hobbies or take part. But that does mean I did have to put effort into doing stuff they'd enjoy on dates. Snag myself a wonderful girlfriend this way, and from the outset, I didn't need to nor do I have to pretend to be what I'm not. The hard part is realizing you can't move the goalposts of their standards, only improve yourself to be better at scoring metaphorically. Girls aren't obliged to like you, and when you're a decent guy but realize you're your biggest problem on that front, don't get mad, get working.